continue. Again, so I'm Roger Rayle, Chair of CARD and Chair of Our Residents for Safe Water, and I'm a citizen volunteer for 31, going on 31 years, watching over the Gelman site. I'm going to share the screen so we can look at the agenda. So at this point, I tell people that we're recording this for posting to YouTube later. So be aware of that. If there is something you don't want to be recorded, don't say it, or tell us about it after the fact and we can edit it out perhaps. But it's best just for completeness and openness to have everything out where everybody has all the information so that the right thing happens. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to our Secretary, Beth, for the next item on the agenda, which is approval of the prior months. Well, it's 2 months ago now because we skipped January, but the December minutes. Let's see if I can bring that up here.
Thank you, Roger. And yeah, this is a vote for the board. So hopefully everyone had a chance to look over the minutes and let me know if there were any changes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
And all in favor?
Second. I'm
Your
sorry.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No? Okay, great. The minutes are approved. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Thank you, Beth, as always.
You're welcome.
And now we'll turn it over to Jack Eaton, our Executive Director, to honcho the meeting.
Thank you, Roger. I'm Jack Eaton. I'm Executive Director of CARD, and I'm going to try to lead us through the agenda this evening. We start out with an update from and about the EPA. Is there anyone here from the EPA? Is there anyone that wants to speak to this? Alrighty. I do see that there's a member of Congresswoman Dingell's office here. Georgia, do you have anything to inform us about?
Everyone. Nothing to share information-wise from our team. Just looking forward to hearing about some of the agenda items later on tonight, and we'll pass that along to the Congresswoman accordingly.
Thank you so much. And I note that Dan's not here either. So there's no comments or questions. I'm going to move on to the EGLE update. And go ahead, Roger. Why don't you tell us?
I gotta find where I put it.
It's on the screen.
Oh, I guess this is it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, basically, EGLE, because it's not a quarterly meeting, just sends in their answers to the questions, to the items on the agenda. So there's you can just read this. Can everybody read this okay? Or if somebody else wants to read it while
You did circulate it to the entirety of CardCore, didn't you?
It came the day before, so I don't know that he might have sent it to the CardCore, but
no, I only attached it to the agenda this morning.
right.
So there is a link in the agenda if anybody wants to look.
Yeah, it'll be in the final version of the agenda. What I present is a PDF that was made just before that was updated. So the new draft monitoring plans for the eastern monitoring area, there's not received anything on that. The western plan is expected after 2 remaining monitoring wells, consent judgment monitoring wells, I and J, are installed. I didn't pull up a map of where those were, but I guess I can add that in to what we share. Financial assurance mechanism. Yeah, it'd be better if EGLE is here to explain this. It's basically saying like a guarantee that the work's going to be done. Otherwise, they're going to be charged some money. The MS4 violation, where they're discharging, it's getting into the Allen Creek drain. That's not covered under the NPDES permit. So they aren't really supposed to be putting anything in there that goes to the drain, and that's still an open issue. It's not going to get resolved this month. You did provide this map of the sampling of surface water, which includes a lot of the drains and the tributaries. And so these are monthly summaries of the various locations. So you can see that there's single and double digit parts per billion in various places, various surface water sites, mostly where they're discharging. But it is getting in to the drain down here at really high levels, high double-digit levels. The limit, and Vince, you might be able to speak to this more than I've, that the limits that EGLE has aren't as tight as what we think they should be.
Well, I think the state rule is that they shouldn't be dumping anything into the creek with AMS4, that they're still working on. The what's allowed to be dumped in the creek is pretty much very little, if anything, because it runs right into the river, Huron River. The other concern we have is that if it's near the surface as it is in the Allen's Creek, there's lots of seeps in that area and a lot of groundwater near the surface. If that gets into homeowners' basements, Dr. Bob Bailey, who's a member of CARD, was good enough to investigate what would be potential dangerous exposure, potentially meaning that it hasn't been studied very well, but Bob's work was accepted and peer reviewed in a journal. And basically they were saying at 150 part per billion, you could be at risk in a house where the water evaporates and the 1,4-dioxane evaporates with the water. And so your basement and potentially your whole house could be have the 1,4-dioxane vapor in the house. And that's a real concern, I think, for a lot of people on the west side, because we have a lot of wet basements. So I think unfortunately, we're not getting much help from the state on the MS4 violation. Gelman has wriggled out of that as far as we can tell at this point. And we still need to put some pressure on Gelman to stop that exposure potential, as well as being in violation of MS4 state law. So I see Rita's got her hand up.
Go ahead, Rita.
Yes, I just wanted to point out that I think it's really interesting that the West Park Pond continues to have detectable levels of 1,4-dioxane, which this is like pretty amazing that it's at in the surface water in West Park.
So I don't know, maybe Roger or someone here can answer. The Allen Creek West Park Southwest and the Allen Creek Chapin have gone from double digits down substantially over time. And I'm wondering if there's some explanation for that reduction.
Could be a time of year they're sampling.
Yeah, it varies quite a bit over the years. It's been as high as 49 part per billion at West Park, and it's come down. I went and watched some of the samples being taken this last time, and I did ask EGLE, what their feeling was about that, and they said it's just currently monitoring and trying to make a determination as to where it's coming from and if there's a potential exposure issue, or whether the MS4 violation should be pressured, more than they have in the past. But I think that a lot of people did not consider that kind of exposure when this all started. And West Park has a lot of seeps coming out of it. We have all these streets like Bath Street and Fountain Street and Water Hill, because it's a very wet area of the city. And as that water comes down the hill, I think what's happening is we're interfacing with the groundwater that's coming like from Betts Park, which had some very high 1,4-dioxane levels. And that, in my opinion, is probably percolating down. And West Park has a very steep hill right before the park. So it's probably starting to interface with the groundwater that's coming from the west side of the city near Betts Park towards the river.
Also, I would say that if we looked at, I don't know if Roger, you could put up that map again, but if you look at it, it's not true of all the sites. So there is, and it's also just in the last year where there's this dramatic drop.
Well,
So out of 4 years of readings, it's in the last year. And the other thing is that some of the sites downstream are remaining constant, and that's so it could be good news. I mean, it would be great. It would be great news if in fact there's less 1,4-dioxane flowing.
Well, the problem is for the vapor intrusion, what's in these light green lines, which is the Allen Creek drain pathways, is not what's in the groundwater.
Well, we have heard from EGLE saying that this is a proxy, that the sampling in the drains should be used and taken and interpreted as a proxy for groundwater. They have said that point blank in these meetings.
Yeah, but it's not the actual what's in the groundwater.
Right. And
Ben Bicknell had his series of wells in this area, permanent shallow groundwater that's never been installed. They did a temporary wells and they found a whole bunch of, double-digit parts per billion up, down, and that was years before this plume. It continues to move. So we don't really don't know what's coming. We have some really high concentrations. There's MW82S, that's the shallowest well that far east, and that one is in triple digits. So that one could have the 150 parts per billion that's heading towards some people's basements. We don't have any down gradient wells, permanent wells, to monitor that.
We could be as low as the danger could be as low as 100 part per billion. I mean, it's just
there you go.
There's a little bit of a fudge factor there. They hasn't been studied. In fact, Bob Bailey was the first person to publish this article with Rita, to their credit. And I think, we could be looking at, exposures down the road if we don't get out in front of this. And I'm hoping EPA steps up, because EGLE and the state don't have the resources to deal with this, it seems. And EPA seems like they're going to take it on. I hope it's sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so these, I guess it's okay to have monitoring in the drain, but we really need the monitoring in the groundwater. That's for the people that don't know, as the ground surface falls away here, as it gets closer to the river, 100 feet of ground is gone. Some of the some of the aquifers are exposed, the contaminated aquifers are exposed, and that's why Vince was saying there's seeps that coming right out of the
Hillsides.
hillsides that have dioxin in it, because it's, you know, it's these plumes of dioxin that are moving that way. So now the good news about that is that as dioxin gets closer to the surface, it has oxygen. There might be more bacteria in the soil and food for the bacteria, and you get some natural degradation of the dioxin. But
I wouldn't count on that, because you look at the Cape Fear River Basin, that's an open river, and tons of dioxide. I mean, yes, some of that, but it's not.
It's going to be some, but we don't know how much because we're not measuring it. You know, we're not measuring it.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah, we're flying blind here, obviously, and we want to fix that.
Well,
Yeah.
and like Vince said, like if you look at the thousands of parts per billion just up the road in Beth's Park, like, and Evergreen, and is even higher. And
Well, even Vets Park has been in the stuff, you know, like 900, 800 parts per billion, which isn't that far from West Park. It's like, you know, half a mile, if that. And it's all coming down. It's just pretty apparent. Unfortunately, we could not get those sampling wells put in for a long duration. So Card Group basically came up with the idea of, well, let's go ahead and just test some of the surface water on the chance that it might be contaminated and give us an idea. And lo and behold, it came back positive. And EGLE, well, DEQ at the time it said that they were very surprised at that. But, you know, the Card Group is not so surprised. And I think, you know, this has really gone way too far, and it's been dragged on forever. And I'm so glad EPA looks like they're going to take it over, and I don't think they'll mess around with it like Gelman would like them to do.
Alrighty then. Seeing no other hands, we should probably chat about the NPDES permit.
Yeah, that's the real elephant in the room this month, because we have until the 23rd of this month to get our comments in. Any objections to this NPDES update, which is basically continuing the same values that they've had for years, even back to 2005. So they're not tightening the discharge standards at all, even though in that time period, the cleanup standards went from 85 parts per billion down to 7.2 parts per billion. So you would expect that the discharge permit, the levels would probably go down accordingly, but they haven't. So that's one of the big complaints about this. I'll have more to say on that during my update.
Go ahead, Rita.
So I was wondering, when I read Dan Bicknell's comments, which I agreed with,
Yes.
he seemed to be citing some documents that I couldn't find. So what I'm wondering is if people have like links to some of these documents, if they could put them in the chat, I would be grateful, because I was looking back through my emails and I found like one thing, but it wasn't very informative. It seemed like Dan was reading something that was much more detailed than what I had.
Okay. Go ahead, James.
Two things. One, I have been copied in terms of correspondence from members of CARD regarding the permit. What are the biggest changes that I asked my fellow CARD members to say with this permit versus the other, or am I correct in assuming this is just simply a continuation of something they've been doing?
It's a continuation.
Yep.
They should be tightening the standards.
But there isn't.
No. So
Okay.
they seem to be seeking the same discharge levels that they had in the previous permit, even though circumstances have changed.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, and they had all those years to work on it too. This
Right.
this was first proposed back in 2019 or 16 something.
Right. And meanwhile they're operating under, is this, I assume the permit has been extended, even though, was there a sunset date on the old one?
A permit.
Yeah, it definitely expired, and they were delayed in renewing it, so the old one stayed in effect.
Okay,
This
again,
is
interesting.
Formalize that old one's staying in effect.
Right. I realize it's the nature of the beast, but it is unfortunate that we're at. But I think the case is clear in terms of other remedies and short of legislation in the state,
Yeah.
which we can talk about. My question then is a process question, and that is, should CARD be issuing a statement in terms of a formal comment related to the permit? And if so, should we look at people in terms of drafting that comment?
Yes, we should. Thanks for volunteering, James.
Yeah.
If you're serious, I will take you up on the offer. Though I will certainly.
Yeah, we need the core of us. Anybody that wants to help work on this can volunteer right now, and we'll make a committee. Somebody jot down the names as they raise their hands, or put their yeses in the chat. I know I've been busy with infrastructure issues.
Okay.
So I'll admit I lack the scientific capacity to comment on the permit, but I'm willing to participate in drafting that statement.
What I started to do was go back and look at the comments for all the prior permit comment periods, and I'm having trouble finding them all. And I supposedly have access to everything, but the way that things are indexed are not easy for retrieval, as Rita has found out. So we'll see what we can find out here. I do have a chart started that shows what originally they were going to discharge 60 to 100 parts per billion instead of 10 or 7, and that led. We actually had a public meeting where we convinced the outgoing official that I guess it was the DEQ at the time, in his retirement, to make this, throw us a bone and get it down to like 20 or 15 or something. Gelman, and that was going to be in the permit, and there was a long comment period for that. But the last week of the comment period, I know it's like a 180-day comment period, something crazy. Gelman contested the permit, and in that last week, the city and the county and the other normal government stakeholders could not respond in time. So SRSW, actually members of our SRSW nonprofit group, counter contested the permit. Otherwise, it would have gone to the administrative law judge and only heard from Gelman. But we rallied and members put up their own money, and we got expert witness and Fred Dendorfer involved, and we won the major part of that contested case. The administrative law judge said the discharge should be 5 parts per billion. We were asking 0 to 3, because early on we said they're treating to non-detect at Evergreen for years. Okay, maybe it's going to be a little harder at the core, so we'll give them 3, because at 3 they're going to have to shoot for 0. So our mantra was 0 to 3 parts per billion is what it should be. The judge mostly agreed with us. Instead of 60 to 100, what Gelman wanted, he came in at 5 monthly average. I think 15 daily maximum, something like that. That went to, would have gone to the Natural Resources Commission if the DEQ had still been part of the DNR, but without it being in the DNR, the DEQ reports directly to the governor at that time. And Engler, you know, the head of the DEQ, without any justification, just doubled it. It went for, it was like 10 and 30 or 15 and 30, something like that. Those are the numbers I got to jot down more for our response. And it was only later that it got reduced to 10 and then later on to 7 parts per billion, which it currently is. But again, during all this period, the standards had been relaxed from 3 parts per billion to 77 to 85. And we only recently got it back down to 7.2 parts per billion as a cleanup standard. Still double what the EPA would have, or actually 20 times what the EPA would have. So those numbers, those tightening of the standards for cleanup should be reflected in the discharge, and that's the basic mantra there. The other part that Dan Bicknell mentioned in his review of it was that they're discharging to Honey Creek, which is losing, parts of Honey Creek lose to groundwater. And I do have some of those maps here someplace. Yeah, can't find it right now. Again, working on just a laptop instead of my desktop, I can't keep track of everything as well as I did normally. But because it's a losing stream, some of that dioxane is going into the groundwater, which feeds homeowners in Scioto Township. And one of the wells that's nearest the creek got hit a few years ago, right here at Breezewood. And then it recently got hit again. 1.4 parts per billion. That well is only 51 feet deep, and it's quite close to Honey Creek. So we don't know if the hits on that came from the plume moving in that direction, or if it came from the discharge in the creek or in the tributary leaking and getting there. We don't know. But it was there, and it's still, you know, there still is a hit going on intermittently at that well. So that could be, over time, that could be hitting a lot of other homeowner wells near the creek, including mine, which is about the same depth. So far, mine's okay. But in Scioto Township, we have a lot of homeowner wells.
How many would you guess, Roger?
Roger, we have some questions. Why don't we go to those?
Go ahead. I'm
Go ahead,
just
So
Ben.
bring up some
yeah.
more stuff here.
Thanks. So how many wells do you think could be affected in Scioto or to the north there?
There, this many.
Mhm.
All these, every one of these is a homeowner well. And in Ann Arbor Township, there's this many.
That's a lot of wells.
And some of these have already been hit. We think the hits here are directly from the evergreen plume. But in areas where Honey Creek loses to groundwater, there could be dioxin on the way to wells. And of course, once it hits a well, what are you going to do? You're going to run water to that one well? City water? Of course not.
Okay.
They're
Let's move on to the next. Go ahead, Beth.
The bromate is another added chemical that they discharge. That's not good.
yeah, since 2004-5, when they started using ozone oxidation instead of UV oxidation, they're adding a new carcinogen to the discharge that wasn't there before. No, it's below the limit, below the acceptable limit, but we don't. And the monitoring of bromate is not as rigorous as dioxin. The only place they're monitoring for bromate is down here in the river. Mm-hmm. Not even monitoring Honey Creek.
And there's many days too that the levels go really high for some reason that they're discharged at. It's just a daily average of whatever the figure is they pick. So there's some days where and I've showed you guys pictures before of the outfall when they were trying to do it into First Sister Lake, of how it just contaminated the whole wetlands. I mean, or any environment is pretty much dead from the chemical discharge there. It looks horrible, Honey Creek. So we're Gelman discharges. So just for those of you that don't know, hopefully the EPA, I mean, is this correct that they'll change all of this? And
this is our hope. Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Erin.
Yeah, I was curious on the group's thoughts about the assumption that the current technology is the best available technology. Or do people have
current technology is not the best available technology. The best available technology, they were using at Evergreen because they could treat to non-detect from 500 parts per billion down to non-detect. Now they had to work at it. They had to spend more money. So
that was UV. Sorry.
That was UV oxidation, which is the acceptable, best pump and treat method. But they decided that if they use ozone, they don't have to use as many other chemicals and they don't have to use as much electricity, and they can get it down to a level that was acceptable to the state because the state had such loose standards. This would not be acceptable in a lot of other states where they value water more, and they don't want dioxin in their water at all.
Go ahead, James.
Yeah, just let me summarize right now in terms of a possible response on behalf of CARD, and that is we make mention that they're not using best management practices. Using old standards in terms
I hope
losing stream.
I hope I'm only seeing the breakup on my end, but I'm getting some hiccups here. Maybe it's only on.
Okay.
I can hear him clearly.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Roger, we've gotten some breakup from you. So maybe it's your small computer there's having a little trouble.
Yeah, I'm running too much stuff probably. I probably should have had somebody else record this.
Well, let me restate what I was saying then, and let me finish. And that is one that we're looking at that the permit is still not mandating best management practices, ozone versus UV. We can make mention in terms of the losing streams for discharge at Honey Creek, particularly and using old standards. If there's anything else that's there, there's several of us now taking this on. Let us know.
Well, what we're going to do is look back at what we sent in at the last one, the last several, and draw from those same comments. If they're going to issue the same old permit, we're going to issue the same old comments with some updates because we have some more data now.
So, Kathy,
I'm assuming then you're in on this then.
Yeah,
in terms of the writing.
Yeah. I gotta find all the comments that
you can't keep them out. I don't think. Anyways, Kathy Knoll was not here tonight, and she wanted me to convey that Scioto Township will be submitting comments about the discharge permit and making some of these arguments, and also they'll be arguing the point that the presence of dioxin in the creek so close to drinking water wells poses an extra danger that maybe wasn't considered in previous permit applications. She also noted that she thought that the city of Ann Arbor is going to submit a comment, and she wasn't sure whether or not the county would. So it looks like the important actors will also be submitting comments and challenging these same numbers. So I think that's a good turn of events. Go ahead, Vince.
I don't know if most people in this group remember that Danaher has what they consider the world's greatest 1,4-dioxane cleanup system called Trojan, and they brag about how great it works. And it's basically UV light, from my memory.
Right.
So Danaher is the responsible party when EPA takes over this site. And they get it down to very low numbers. I'm not sure if it's below 1 part per billion.
Oh yeah, it's
So how low do they get, Roger?
it depends, but
So
their
does
system,
anybody know what
their
the
system
drinking
is in the same realm as what Gelman's was when they were treating it back in the late 90s at Evergreen.
So this is not rocket science. So
Well, it kind of is, but
Does anybody know what the drinking standard for dioxin in Arizona is? Because Danaher is treating
yeah,
Tucson's drinking water supply.
yeah, but they're blending it with other water too, so they're not, they're getting below level by they have other water sources and they blend it together, I guess, a little bit. I'm going to be there in a couple months. I'm going to maybe touch base with somebody.
Just don't drink the water. At this point, I'd like to move on because we're kind of lagging here,
Yep.
even though we haven't had EPA or EGLE. Any further comments on this before I move on?
Well, we're going to have something done here in the next week or two, a draft of it, and then get it in by the 23rd.
All righty.
Sorry.
I think James collected names, and we'll set up an email list and we'll circulate that stuff. Moving on, is there anybody here from Washtenaw County that can update us? I don't see Yusuf.
Well, Kristen's here, but she's only staff.
Yeah. She did comment in the chat, I think.
Hey there, it's Kristen. Yeah, I did comment in the chat just about, we do try to drill drinking water wells deep enough so that there's a confining clay layer so that surface contaminations are not something that's influencing people's drinking water wells. There certainly may be wells out there that are under the influence of surface water contamination, but hopefully those are few and far between. I don't have any intervener updates. I think the process is still slowly moving forward, back and forth between, Gelman and the county.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything to say about homeowner well sampling?
No, other than that we're going to be doing it again. I don't know that we've sat down and kind of mapped out our houses yet. Yeah. But that usually happens pretty soon.
So we can
if there's
expect
any feedback, again, I think we've said it before and we'll say it again. We'll be sampling any homes that have tested positive that we will be, feel like we'll have a likely detection, or that are near homes that have tested positive over the last year. So it's a pretty robust area. But if you guys have any feedback, don't hesitate to reach out so that we can consider that. We certainly have kept an eye on what Scioto Township and Ann Arbor Township have done as well.
And one of the big complaints, of course, we have is that the state is not using the best analysis method. They should be using 522 for all the samples of homeowner wells. So we have a heads up, the best heads up of where the dioxin really is.
Alrighty.
No, you don't have any control over that, but the state really should just be using the best method. Just like the company should be using the best available technology, the state should use the best available technology for detecting dioxin.
It's my understanding that both SIO and Ann Arbor townships are using 522 tests, right?
And the city, and of course the EPA will be using that.
All right. With that thought in mind, I'm going to move on. Is there anyone here from, well, yeah, Mike's here. Mike, do you have anything to report from the township?
Yeah, not anything positive though. Essentially, distributing the resolution sort of fell off my to-do list, so I have not done that. I don't think anybody from CARD has done it to my knowledge. And
well, we've passed it to CARD Corps.
right, but I mean in terms of electeds, or you know, that's the question that was presented, elected.
Yeah, that necessarily wasn't that you had to do that. I just didn't know if CARD in general was going to send that to anybody.
It's hard to keep up with the list sometimes, but somebody has it. Mike, you're muted.
Mike, you're mute.
I was pressing on my space bar. I guess that doesn't want to work right now. Yeah, so now that SIO seems to be passing a very similar resolution, maybe we can bundle in them and ship them out at the same time.
That would be good. So on the agenda, there's a link to the final draft of your resolution, and
yes,
it's coming forward to your board at some near time.
Well, we can certainly make that happen. I can't remember whether we did it before or not. I think not. So.
And if it ends up on one of your agendas, do you want us to reach out and lobby, or do you think it has sufficient support?
I think it has sufficient support. I'll talk with Diane about it though and see if she has a different view, but I think it has sufficient support. We have all our meetings are the third Monday of the month, so we got time to get it on an agenda.
Right.
Yeah, it's again, what I say about this is that with the plume spreading, the company has not put in enough monitoring wells to detect all of these hits in SIO Township, in this one that was in Ann Arbor Township. So we're back to what happened when the contamination was first discovered back in 1984, 85, and 86. The only wells where we could test for dioxin were drinking water wells, homeowner wells, and corporate wells. We're back to that. We're using our own drinking water wells to find out where the dioxin is. You know, in time to keep it to know where it's going to be going. Anyway, that's you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just on the final draft of the CARD resolution, I wonder if we should make it clear that part 0.35 part per billion is an EPA number that Rita's got the
well, it's not a draft anymore. We passed it.
Yeah, but I think we should, incorporate that into any of these resolutions so people know what EPA and the Environmental Working Group think is a 1 in a million potential cancer rate increase at 0.35 part per billion. That's way lower than a lot of people are probably looking at. And it's not a bad idea to keep putting that number out there to remind a lot of these residents that this is very low number and we need to get down to it.
Yeah, we don't talk about numbers in this at all. Like the 522 method, by some labs, they can detect on to 0.12 parts per billion.
Right, but I think people generally out in the public don't understand what is a dangerous exposure in the drinking water. And the more we put that out there, I think the better. And I think it's not in a lot of people's minds what the numbers are that are dangerous. So that's just something Rita and I discussed earlier today.
Yeah, well, that's Michigan should be tightening its standards to match what other states who value water more, because we're stewards to 1/5 of the world's fresh surface water. And
Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say that if there is a desire to get some numbers or other things in, the time to do that would be working with SIO if they haven't adopted a final resolution at this point.
I thought that
Does
Roger.
anyone know?
I thought that Roger told me that they had.
yeah, I think they have. And we don't want to make this was just a resolution to make sure that the testing that's going on is paid for by Gelman, and that any homeowner, any well owners that want to have their well tested, we're within a half mile of an existing hit, should be able to get it tested without having the state and the county decide which ones should get tested. There may, and we're getting back to polluter pay. The polluter should be paying for the testing.
Well, state's working on that.
Yep.
Okay. I think we're going to move on to Scioto Township. As I mentioned, Kathy is not here tonight. She asked me to tell you that there's nothing new to tell you about the KOC property. As Roger indicated, they've passed a resolution, which is a big plus. And then previously I mentioned that they are likely to file a statement regarding the discharge permit. Any questions or comments about Scioto Township? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to the city of Ann Arbor. Is anybody? Oh, Aaron, are you speaking for us?
Yes, and
Okay.
Patty can jump in as well
Okay.
with any additional updates. Yeah, no big updates. Continuing to monitor our Sentinel well. And yes, we're reviewing the draft permit documents, and I plan on commenting on that before the 23rd.
Thank you so much. Patty, did you have anything to add?
I didn't, but I did have a question. If anybody knows, the document that EGLE circulated that included the monitoring plans and that Eastern plan, is that available or is it still under EGLE review? Does anybody know?
I think what does it say back here that they're still reviewing it or something? They're
still reviewing
for something
okay.
back and forth. I'll have to look at that again and get back to you.
Okay. I could also reach out to Chris. I was hopeful that it was available at this time.
Yeah, I think they're waiting for there's 2 more wells that are going to go in or something.
Oh, those 2, yeah. I thought that was the western side, but
Maybe
okay.
it is.
All right.
I'm still waiting for the 2023 data from Gelman so I can update my Google Earth mashups, etc. So with Chris,
go ahead, James.
Thanks, Jack. Just a quick question for Aaron and possibly Patty as well. In terms of your statement of the city to EGLE regarding the permit, do you have any idea, bare bones, bullet points, what the city's going to say or anything you want to characterize right now? And if you don't, that's fine.
Yeah, we don't have a solid idea. We're still reviewing. I know the theme will be, protection of our intake in Barton Pond. So we'll be, I think, probably commenting on some themes that were touched on here. But yeah, still working on it.
All right. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, James. So I think we've covered Ann Arbor. I did want to mention that at a recent city council meeting, council approved another $200,000 in legal expenditures to pursue enforcement of the city's, what is it? I think it's a 2006 settlement agreement with Gelman. They did not move to remain intervener in the case against Gelman, but they have decided to try to pursue some enforcement actions under a previous settlement agreement. So they're up to about $1.2 million in attorney fees so far since I think it's 2016. So lots of dollars. Moving on, Rita, do you have anything to tell us about Yale?
No, not at this time. I don't think there's any updates. I communicated some stuff with Phyllis, and he said thank you very much, and I haven't heard back.
Okay.
Heather did want people to fill out the survey if they haven't done so yet.
Alrighty. Maybe we could circulate the link to that survey one more time to CardCore members.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Heather isn't here tonight, is she?
So maybe Rita could make a comment about Heather. What she's doing a survey on.
Heather was with us.
She
might have had to leave.
Okay.
Well, Heather was doing.
Oh no, there she is.
Oh.
There's Heather.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I've got a bad connection, so just saying hi if you can hear me.
Okay.
Yes, do fill out the survey. It's going well. We're just at about significance, so if a couple more people need to jump on, that'd be great if they could do that. And we'll go from there. But thank you very much for everyone who has filled it out. That's it. Thanks.
Maybe you could make a comment about what the survey does or is about.
Yes, so this is a dioxane. It's specific for 1,4-dioxane. It's a survey that is just in the really early stages of being developed and considered across the United States. It's got a long ways to go, but this is our initial put out to the public and specifically to evaluators and groups that might have a vested interest in designing and having input on what exactly we're asking in a dioxane survey. So if you have, obviously you have some expertise, so let your voices be heard, take the survey. There's an evaluator section starting at question 36. Are you an evaluator? You say yes, and it will take you into an evaluator section and just give us some feedback. And that will play into probably the only 1,4-dioxane survey that will be developed. So this is your chance. Thanks so much, guys.
Again, thank you. So seeing no hands up, I'm going to move on to the executive board. I'm going to move on to the state legislative update. James, do you have an update?
I don't have anything that's terms of new news. I'm just for the people that are new, just basically what these bills are going to do. And I'll tell you a little bit what's probably going to be happening legislatively from as I understand it. But most importantly, we've been struggling with what the state has not been doing, even with the NPDES permit. But one of the bills that are involved would require polluters to pay for land and water to be restored as much as technically feasible, meeting stringent standards and with achievable with current remediation methods. And it would also allow EGLE to set up criteria for cleanup without having rely on legislative review, which is something that's been holding things up. Even the modified state standard 8.5 to 7.2 for years. And we require businesses to have the assets to provide upfront financial assistance to cover the cost of environmental cleanup. Those are very big, which relate to the issue at hand. What is happening is that the legislature is now back in session. There's an even split in the House in terms of Democrats versus Republicans, with as two representatives sought and won higher office, ran for mayor, and special elections are currently being held. So no major action is going to happen probably until spring, as there are no Republican co-sponsors of this package of legislation. But I think the sponsors, Jeff Irwin in the Senate and Jason Morgan in the House, I think the legislators that are signed on to this are certainly looking for various environmental champions to rally in support of this bill. I think they're being evangelical about it. I know that the Sierra Club is particularly interested in this, and I think we should probably be involved in cheerleading them on in terms of educating the public what this legislation can do. I do have a cheat sheet. If anyone's interested, I can share that information with you, what's going to happen. There is going to probably be some movement in terms of lobbying. I'll try to pass that on to the CARD core group. I don't have anything else in terms of new information at this time.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? So do any other executive board members have anything they want to bring to our attention at this point in the agenda? Seeing none, I'm going to turn this over to the chair for his update.
All right. So, still waiting for the EGLE database with data through 2023. For those that are new, EGLE has to reconstitute its database from monthly updates from Gelman, instead of just using a common database that, a read-only database. Gelman doesn't include all the data that they used to include. Neither does the state. There's data that's early data that shows on some of the Google Earth mashups I do that is not in the database. The EGLE is adding in the township sampling that they're doing of homeowner wells using the 522 method, and that data is not quite fully integrated yet. I've offered to work with Chris at EGLE to make that a simple process. It should take like 5 minutes to do the update, and I'm not sure how long it's going to take to get that done. Once I get that data, then I can update my Google Earth mashups that you've been seeing visualizations of here, and then the Tableau public visualizations that I'll jump to in a minute to show those new people what we're facing into the future. I had a couple short Zoom sessions with Chris at EGLE and with Aaron from the city to help them get better briefed about the Gelman site. Aaron, how do you think that went? I mean, was it useful to you?
Yeah, it was. It was, really helpful. Kind of filled in some holes in the story for me.
Yeah, and there's a lot of background. And one of the things that's important in my mind is that decision makers, before they make a decision, should have a threshold understanding of the background of this site, so that we don't repeat past errors and mistakes, and try to do the best we can with what we got, and part of that is organizing all the information and all the data, and that if we had a single unified, up-to-date, accurate database, that would make things a lot easier for everybody. One of the things toward that, getting all the information, all the ducks in order from the past history is to, I started doing this before COVID. I started going around. I went to SIO, and SIO has one of the best archives because they don't do anything with it. They just store it in the back room. So it's in order still. Even mine is not complete because I only took it over from Pat Ryan halfway through. I don't have a complete set. The library has a set, Ann Arbor District Library, but that gets rifled through all the time. SIOS, however, is in a protected room, and I've gone through that, and it's pretty complete for as far as it goes, as far as the paper copies go. But of course, they're paper copies, and it's hard to do keyword searches on paper copies. I started at the beginning of COVID, then went to the county with Jenny Kahn, and went to the basement there and started looking at their archives, but that got cut short because of COVID. So I want to pick that up again and working with Aaron and any of the other local government officials to see if we have a complete set. Who has what? Is there something somebody has that's not in the other sets? And maybe work with the Ann Arbor District Library or somebody like that, maybe the University of Michigan School of Information students, somebody to pull this all together, because there's information that the locals have that are not necessarily in the state's archive. And then, of course, we go back and review that with what the state has. The state has started to digitize some of theirs. We'd like to have some input into that process so they can be the best possible outcome. And then maybe we can turn a lot of that information over to a system that will allow us to retrieve information more quickly when Rita wants to, and all of the rest of us want to, where's this document that's being referred to? Can I get to it real quickly? That's what we need. We need better indexing and retrieval of all this information, so it doesn't get lost in the decades that this cleanup is going to take, and over several generations of people working on it. Just to review, the NPDES Gelman discharge permit renewal is due the 23rd of this month. Has some of the same discharge limits as the last few older versions. The current permit, even though the state's dioxin standards were tightened from 85 to 7.2, those are not reflected in the discharge. It's still discharging 7 parts per billion monthly average, when the standard should be at least 3.5 parts per billion or less, even with Michigan's 1 in 100,000 cancer risk. 0.35 if Michigan retightens their standard to 1 in a million cancer risk, like other states have continually used. Again, dioxin discharge may contaminate groundwater that supply area wells, and that hit the sequence of hits at 4709 Breezewood are early examples of this, and I already showed that map of where that was on the thing. I'm going to digress a little bit into the magnitude of the problem, and this came up because I just read an article, Bridge Magazine, Bridge, Michigan, an article on Michigan just a day or two ago. Michigan's going to spend $19 million for the last piece to redevelop an ex-GM plant in Lansing. So this is the area they're talking about, and it has a dioxin. This is the dioxin plume for that area. So it's about half a mile long, and they're talking about 1 and 2 parts per billion in just a few spots. And they're doing some remediation using bioremediation. I think in this area right here, this little section here, to capture the water that must be moving in a certain direction, to bioremediate as it moves through. But I wanted to give you an idea of what size plume that is compared to the Gelman plume. So here's that same plume in Lansing superimposed on the Gelman plume. And remember, 1 and 2 parts per billion versus 1 and 2 digit parts per billion versus 3 and 4 and 5 digits of 10,000, 1,000, 500 parts per billion in the Gelman plume. And this is an area where everybody around it has access to city water. Here's an area, and you saw already how many township wells are near and already contaminated by this. This is the nation's largest 1,4-dioxane contamination site of its type in the country. And we should be using all of our resources. Everybody should be working together with the due diligence to match the scale of the problem. So that's basically all I had to say for this meeting. I have a whole list of tasks that I have to get to, and I'm always looking for people to help with it. And some of the tasks are pretty, routine scut work. And I don't have the time to do that like I used to, or that I ever had. I try to use machines to do a lot of that. It's going to take a village to get this. As we have all, this is our village here. We've all been working on this, some longer than others, but we have to continue at this. Otherwise, this is not going to be good for anything left here. If we don't take care of it now, the sooner we take care of it, the better it's going to be. So that's basically. That's my update. Any questions that people have? Any comments?
I wanted to make a comment, Roger. Thanks for updating us. I wonder if people realize how stretched Ann Arbor water supply is. The mayor had proposed going to the Great Lakes Water Authority, Detroit Water, and the city council rejected that. Basically, Rita and Dan Bicknell spoke before council and convinced council not to move in that direction. It was hugely expensive, hugely energy intensive to pump all that water from Lake Huron or Detroit River to Ann Arbor, and hugely expensive for the city of Ann Arbor. So there is an issue that we're facing in Ann Arbor and Scioto Township and Ann Arbor Township and just the general area here that, we don't have unlimited amount of water. And we really need to take that into account when we want to try and maintain a clean water source. And unfortunately, we've had some trouble getting EPA involved because government officials weren't interested in cooling Ann Arbor. Mayor Taylor wasn't interested. He was afraid of property values. Well, I think, we've now seen the light and it's pretty bright. And it's unfortunate that we've let this go on so badly, so far along. But we need to maintain our water quality because there's a lot of people depending on that groundwater, and we shouldn't let it get contaminated. Thank you.
Thank you. So
here's the visualization that I didn't include in my update. This is the Tableau public graph of all of these samples that we have access to on a log scale from 100,000 parts per billion down to 0.1, or this represents non-detect because you can't put 0 on a log scale. And this is over time. So there was sampling going on, and most of these were, again, were drinking water wells, and then they started putting monitoring wells in, and then Paul took over and put a lot more monitoring wells in, and they did a lot more cleanup, and some of these levels are going down order of magnitude or two. And then it kind of leveled off when Danaher took over. And you can imagine this being projected out into the future. This is through 2022. 2023 is not going to look much different than 2022. These are the standards. Groundwater surface water interface is 2800, now it's 280. The groundwater standard was 85, now it's 7.2. We're not even meeting these old standards, let alone the new standards. And if we talk about EPA, a 3.5 standard of 1 in 100,000 cancer risk over a 70-year lifetime, that's all the way down to here. How do we get all of these dioxane hits here down below these levels? And if we're going to be as rigorous as other states, how do we get it down below 0.35? How long is that going to take? Imagine us going out many decades into the future, and the dioxane is moving the whole time. And the more delays, and Gelman's, Danaher especially, very good at delaying. When the local judge said, we've got to get this moving, and we're going to have quarterly meetings to take care of any of the problems with this fourth consent judgment plan, Danaher, Gelman, immediately appealed that. And it took a year, and 2 of the 3 judges on the appeals court threw out the judge's ruling. And so nothing much has happened in terms of moving this forward in an aggressive way. And it's back to the same old. It's up to everybody to work together. This is the problem. We have to look at the data. The data is the only way we know what's going on with the dioxane. And you can narrow this down. You can do it by, the Western plume actually doing pretty good, better than the rest of them, but it's still not down below 7.2. And this is, the Western plume is heading towards people's wells. It's already hit on Breezewood. The core area, C3, really high concentration still. C2 is a shallow aquifer. There's hardly any wells left in that, so you don't see much. D2 is the midway, that's the evergreen plume, basically. And again, that's kind of plateaued. And the E plume that was only discovered belatedly in 2000 is also plateauing. It's heading east, and that's what's heading towards people's basements near Barton Pond. The marshy area, where some of the highest concentrations is really high, and they don't even bother to show low values there because it's a very small area, and they're trying bioremediation there. So this is the kind of thing. And by the way, here's surface water. And the thing you notice about surface water is that they're also above these values. And a lot of this surface water is in the Tributary and Honey Creek, but some of these higher values, as we saw before, are in the Allen Creek drain, heading straight to the river, east through the city. So there's a pipeline of dioxane going through the city. There seems to be a little pipeline going north through Silo Township, and there's a pipeline going west through along that tributary, and there's even an offshoot that's going down south through Saginaw Forest. Dioxane is going to go wherever water goes. It's 100% miscible, goes wherever water goes. Once it gets anaerobic in groundwater, it doesn't break down. So that's the problem. And I hope that helps people visualize it. And I hope we can keep these visualizations going so that the problem doesn't get swept under the rug. Thank you.
So Roger, how long do we think it's going to take for EPA to get involved on the ground?
Well, according to people that were on interviewed just last week, they were thinking 5 to 10 years before they actually start doing something. Dan Bicknell thinks it'd be a lot quicker. I think it depends on the local views, how the people on the ground have to keep talking about it and keep people informed. And the EPA responds accordingly. You know, you can't push them too fast because they can only do things. They only have so much money to hire consultants and that. But if they'd rather work with people that want to work with them than work with people that don't want to work with them, if you know what I mean. And like you said, Vince, you know, that's part of the reason they hadn't been in to this point. They were in way back in the early days, and there was opposition to it at that point, maybe for good reason, because the EPA was still dealing with, you know, major sites that had more priority. But this is a priority site. This will definitely meet the number, and it will become a Superfund site. But we need to be ready to stay with it for the long haul and to help the EPA do the best they can. And that's what they have to do. Beth.
Yes, thank you, Roger. And I know I probably shouldn't talk about it because it's way down here in North Carolina, but dilution is not the solution. With this NPDES thing, the contamination of 14D was 250 miles upriver, and it's entering our drinking water that far away. So, I mean, I don't know what we think when this does hit, like, and letting them put 7 parts per billion in the tributary is nothing. And I mean, it's really not. It's I don't know, not good.
Yeah, we have to change the attitudes of a lot of people.
One of the good things I think that the EPA will do once we're listed is that they're going to come in and do a better survey of just the parameters of the plume. You know, it's my opinion that Gelman hasn't really looked very hard for dioxin or for the spread of dioxin because they don't want to be held responsible for what they find. But EPA is going to take a different tack, and they're going to come in and they're going to try to fully delineate the scope of the problem. And I think that's exactly where we need to start. You can't really prescribe a remedial course if you don't know what you're dealing with.
That's right.
This is what I look forward to in the early stages of this.
Yeah. Well, and they've already done some of that. Because before you solve a problem, you got to define it properly. Gelman thought that there was 64,000 pounds of dioxin that escaped into the environment from their inadequate treatment systems back in the early days. When they're pumped and partially treated more than 64,000 pounds, they estimated 80,000 pounds. And then they blew past that. It's probably about 120,000 pounds of dioxin they've removed out of the 850,000 pounds that they used over 20 years. We don't know how much is left, but when you look at this data, why aren't some of these going down? Some of them are, but why aren't they all going down? Well, maybe they're not maybe one of the things that I've asked for is when Gelman has to put in a replacement well, which they've had to do a few times now because wells wear out or the screen gets clogged or something. When they put the new well in, as they're drilling that new well, they should use the same parameters that they use to drill new wells. In other words, do vertical sampling every 10 feet or so and see if the dioxane that was there when the original well was put in, but maybe screened at a different level, if those other layers still have dioxane. I think there's a lot of dioxane in layers that are separate from the layers that they're purging from. And that's part of the reason we're seeing these surprise hits and the ongoing dioxanes, because they're not removing all the dioxane. They're only removing it where the, you know, in 1 or 2 or 3 well layers, when there might be 4 or 5 well layers, aquifer layers that they have to pump from. And you know, it's a daunting task, but at least you should know, you know, it gives you an idea how much longer you're going to be pumping. You know, Larry Lemke, and his students, when they did a statistical analysis of how long it's going to take dioxane to move east from Wagner Road to the river, the average time was 77 years to 351 years. Now that's a really long time for average dioxane to go that far. And you know, that's without pumping. So this is a long-term problem, and people need to gear up for that. And we need to have an entity like CARD, and maybe this will be the citizen group that's part of merging into for EPA Superfund site, to keep on top of this for as long as it takes. This is going to be a problem long after all of us on the screen here are gone. And we got to do what we can now to prepare for that. So on that note, it's going to be sunny and bright the rest of the week.
Thank you for returning us to an optimistic tone. Does anyone have a non-agenda item that they'd like to raise at this point in time? Seeing no hands, I'll remind you our next meeting is the quarterly meeting, and it'll be in the morning. I hope to make it.
Yeah, that'd be March 5th.
Yes. All right.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Are the students still on screen?
Yes, we're still here.
Yeah, so I can stay and talk to you if you want, and anybody
That would be
else.
wonderful.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Great job.
All right, good to see everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye,
Great meeting.
Bye.
Get your
Enjoy your
sunscreen out.
nice weather up there.
I feel like with
Yeah,
Beth's
we're getting a taste of
It'll
what
be
you've
in
gone
the
through.
high 70s down here.
Yeah, okay,
Right,
just don't rub it in, okay?
I see a little tan coming on already.
Can somebody bump her off?
As I
a
go
lot,
drink
everyone.
my dioxane water that I'm stuck
Oh,
drinking in the
nice.
Okay.
municipal water here.
Uh,
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.